you to meet Dr. Felucio Fakorede out of the Mississippi Delta by way of Nigeria. But so are we all. All you Nigerians, you all just claim all of the African Americans, and I am not mad at you. these, these are the ballers of Africa. Yes, you are.
Good morning.
Yes, yes, I'm putting it out there. Everybody all over the continent says these Nigerians are crazy. They're the richest, craziest people on the continent. I love you both for being here today. But you know what? I want to have, he was with us last
Good
week.
morning, everyone.
Dr. Deborah Holden is our epidemiologist in residence on the Santita Jackson Show. And she gives us a lot of information. I mean, all jokes aside, she can only be with us till the bottom of the hour. But he offered to come back, Dr. Deborah Holden, after I read this fantastic article from ProPublica, in which Lizzie Presser, who bugged him to death, and he wouldn't pay attention to her until he found out that she was really sincere. I told you, these Nigerians, what are you going to do with them? Black patients were losing limbs at triple the rate of others. And he put up billboards, Dr. Verholden, in the Mississippi Delta so he could save their limbs if it wasn't too late. I want us to, we see diabetes everywhere, Dr. Fakorede. We see, I mean, it's everywhere, everywhere. And many of us are hypoglycemic. I found out that I was hypoglycemic years ago, but I was able to manage it, and I'm asymptomatic now because I went on a particular diet and all of that. And so I wanted to find out from you, number one, I think many of us are walking around diabetic or pre-diabetic, and we don't even know it. Would you not say that that's true, doctor?
That is true. Good morning, everyone. First of all, congratulations, Santita, and happy anniversary to you and your team. May God continue to expand your megaphone and speaking truth to power. It's an honor to be on with Dr. Deborah Verholden. In terms of diabetes is basically a condition that impairs the body's ability to process blood glucose, otherwise known as blood sugar. So that's why, in the South we call it the sugar. Mm-hmm. And in the United States, it's estimated that over people over 18 years of age who are diagnosed or undiagnosed with diabetes, that number amounts to close to 30 million people. And about 80 million have prediabetes. And so we need to get to the definition of being pre-diabetic versus a diabetic. And that all has to do with basically what your sugar level is. And what we use to approximate that is called the hemoglobin A1C, which is a protein that resides on your red blood cells, and it codes sugar. So if your hemoglobin A1C is between a value of 5.6 to 6.5, you have prediabetes. And if it's above 6.5, you are a diabetic. And so that's the first, basically, passport that everyone needs to go and figure out when they get blood work drawn in their primary care's office or their specialist offices, to basically ask if they are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And there are certain symptoms that they have to look out for, which we can talk about now or I can talk about later. I know we have to get Dr. Verholden on, but it's basically our next challenge in the cardiovascular space, in addition to obesity.
Well, I mean, really, and she's going to be able to stay with us, but I really want us, one of the things that I've learned about being a patient, the importance of self-advocacy. No one has helped me more with that than Renee Ferguson, the noted journalist here in Chicago. Really doing your research and asking the right questions. What was striking to me as I read this article about your journey down in the Mississippi Delta, Dr. Fakorede, is that so many of the patients, these are bright people. They might not have degrees or be learned. These are bright people. Bright people. They just don't know the questions to ask. And they don't know what's available to them. They thought that getting an amputation, Dr. Verholden, was a rite of passage. That getting sugar was just something that was going to happen to you. And that getting an amputation, well, that's going to come too. Wow. Dr. Falco. Oh my goodness.
Right.
How, I mean,
It is.
I see it all
Is.
over the. I see it
You
all over
know.
the South Side here in Chicago. I mean, wherever I go, whenever I go to a
Right.
black community, I see a lot of people who are amputees.
Every 30 seconds, a limb is lost due to peripheral arterial disease or diabetes. And what that means is that, diabetes, which is the sugar, accelerates the buildup of plaque and cholesterol in your blood vessels and causes the narrowing and the lack of good oxygen blood supply to an organ. So when that happens in the heart, you have, heart disease or heart failure. And majority of cases of heart attacks or heart failure are mainly diabetics. When that happens in the blood vessels going to your neck, you get a stroke. And majority of patients who also have strokes are either have high blood pressure or diabetes. And unfortunately, when that happens in your lower extremities, people have peripheral arterial disease or develop a non-healing wound and ulcer that's ignored. And some of them actually follow up with podiatrists or other doctors who might be aggressive in looking at the circulatory system or ruling out problems with their nerve conduction supply, which blood glucose impairs. So when you have neuropathy, which is the impairment of your nerve supply to your legs, you cannot feel. And most of these people walk around barefooted or just, don't take note of the fact that there is an abnormality in how their feet either looks or the sensation, and then that progresses slowly. And by the time they get caught or they get diagnosed by specialists such as myself, they are at the end stage of peripheral arterial disease, also known as critical limb ischemia. And that is what eventually will lead to an amputation if it's not aggressively treated with therapeutic measures as well as medications.
You know what, Dr. Deborah Furholden? I feel like we've been looking at COVID-19, and we should. But it seems to me that diabetes, we've got a pandemic, or at least an epidemic there too.
Well, I've been telling people since this crisis started, right before we sort of had the declaration, because it really wasn't declared a pandemic, a worldwide epidemic, until it started to take over the U.S. And I addressed a group of young people in Baltimore City, and I said, yes, this is coming. You're going to have to practice a lot of precaution and a lot of things that your mom told you, but please do not take your eyes off of the ball. You are more likely to die from diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, or gun violence than you ever will be from COVID. And the thing that is so heartbreaking for me during the COVID pandemic, and I've shared with you, Santita, and others, that people are,
2 minutes,
especially those who were already challenged with access to health care. And it's not even access, just having a trusted provider, transportation, the kind of communication with your medical provider that has you feel safe and secure, etc. Those people are now waiting substantially longer to go to the hospital to get care, even with the advent of, sort of telehealth for the masses, because telehealth already existed, but now we're really seeing that has sort of taken off. People are having strokes and not going into the hospital. I've read the article, Dr. Fakarede, and I'm just like in awe.
Oh.
I mean, to see how you framed diabetes in this historical context.
1 minute.
And then amputation in this historical context.
Yes.
That the disparities make sense when you look at the history and then you look at the current landscape. So yes, COVID is, it's like with a lot of these things, it's preventable, right? There are things that we can do. And with diabetes, there are also things that we can do. But there are so many structural challenges.
30 seconds.
And but when we come back, I want you all to talk about that. I mean, we're going to pick up on that point on the other side, because the things that we can do, we have challenges, absolutely. But is there something we can do?
20 seconds.
Absolutely. We can head off diabetes. I know I did. And you can too. So let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson
10
Show.
seconds.
See it Wendy City Live tonight. No, today at 1 o'clock and tonight. Back in just a minute. Angelique, we're gonna speak um, to your belief. We're gonna speak to that. Um, we're gonna speak to that because because some people might feel as you do. Um, Black folks, I hear you. I hear you because but this is for me. This is not about blaming black people. This or shaming, blaming, shaming. This is not about that at all. This is about really going to the heart of the matter. I don't want to fix the blame. I want to find some solutions. I want to fix people. We are, there are a lot of diabetics in the black community. I mean, and in the Native American community and in the Hispanic community. Maybe that, because of where we all come from, maybe some foods that we're eating, the Western diet might not agree with us. I don't know. But I think we need to be open to that. Um, and so I'm okay with it, really. And I think we need to really think about that. Really think about that. But I want these professionals to speak with you about that when we get back on the other side, okay? So, Angelique, and why don't you consider calling in? I think that would be great.
3 minutes.
763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. We'd love to hear from you because you don't have to agree with everything that you're hearing me say, everything that you're hearing my guests say. Put it out there because you're speaking for a lot of other people too, and that's important, really. And we're all adult enough to take it as long as it's delivered in a respectful way, because that's what we do here on the Santita Jackson Show. We relate to each other in a respectful way. Let's talk about it, because this is about our health, everybody. For real, for real, for real. This is about our health. So think about that. Think about that, because too many people I know are dying. Too many people are dying. And thank you, Michael. Happy anniversary. Thank you, my sweet. But too many people are dying because of diabetes, and it shouldn't be like that. This is not right. So, Angelique, I wish you would call in. I really
2
do.
minutes.
Because I think that your skepticism, having them speak to that, could help somebody else. Think about that. This is not about a fight. I don't do all that. I don't have time for it. Your skepticism could help the skepticism of others. No, just keep trying. Keep trying. Just keep on calling. Keep calling. 773-763-9278. 773 WCPT. Just keep trying. Just keep trying. Keep trying. Because I want you to speak to, these are two of the finest doctors in the world. Of course, Dr. Deborah Dr. Deborah Fur Holden is not she's not a physician, she's an epidemiologist, but they're in the same basket. He's a cardiologist, and he's looking at diabetes.
1 minute.
So, okay, 773 763 9278. Would someone put the number for her? 773-763 WCPT. That's okay. Be full. Be emotional. That's fine. Okay? Of course. 773
30 seconds.
763 WCPT. 773-763. There you go. Thank you. Okay, very good. So she's going to answer you, okay? Let it ring.
Let it ring because she's about to bring you back up.
10 seconds.
Search We Can online to find out more. Message from
5,
Ad Council, HHS, and
4,
We Can program.
3,
This is
2,
WCPT 820.
1. Cueing in music. Mic going hot.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, the first anniversary show of the Santita Jackson Show, June 3rd, 2020, everybody. So wonderful being with you today as we talk about diabetes. Diabetes. Angelique is going to call in, and I'm so glad that you are. She said she's ringing. Because she's a skeptic. Dr. Felucio Fakarede, she's a skeptic. And I'm going to let her speak for herself. She said, I don't think black people have more diabetes than anyone else, so just hold on because I want her to speak to you. She said she's very emotional about this. And, of course, Dr. Deborah Holden, according to Bab, she's a saint. He's in love. I can't believe it. Oh, Crunchy Bab is in love with Deborah. I love it. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at you, sweetie. He said, look, she's a saint. Put that ring around her head, and that's it. But what is going on with diabetes? And you all were getting into some really good stuff. I have got a lot of callers. But I really felt, Dr. Verholden and Dr. Fakarede, that we needed to have like a clinic. I mean, and we could have a lot of these. Because, I'll just give you this. One of my dear friends who is a physician, she was on Martha's Vineyard, and anyone who knows anything about Martha's Vineyard, it's an island. And the only way you get to the island is on the ferry. You even have to put your car on the ferry. And people really walk the island, but if you want to take your car, you do. And she missed the ferry. She wasn't feeling well, and her mother was a diabetic. And she called me, one of my best friends. She said, Tita, let me tell you what happened to me. I wasn't feeling right. And as a physician, she kind of knew where she was going. She said, so I went to the restroom and I tasted my urine. And she said it tasted like Kool-Aid. And I said, I've got it. I said, it tasted like Kool-Aid? She said, like Kool-Aid.
Wow.
That was almost 30 years ago. And it's just stayed in my mind. It's like the mid-90s. It stayed in my mind. And I said, wait a minute, your urine was like, I just kept repeating that. I said, well, bless your heart. I said, but at least you know. And so she was going to hop the ferry the next day to go to a doctor to get a confirmation, what she could do. She had friends up there. But I said, wow, what does that mean, doctor?
What that means is, back in the day, actually, there were part of your rite of passage, and this is way before my time, was to test the glucose in someone's urine, and some people will taste it. And there are certain risk factors, but also there are certain symptoms that you get if you are diabetic. And some of that include increased urination, so frequent urination, dehydration, women who get frequent yeast UTIs because yeast get their energy from glucose, weight loss, increased appetite, if you have an unquenchable thirst all the time, unexplainable fatigue, you have blurred vision that's unexplained, your skin is dry, you have a lot of cuts that do not heal appropriately or bruises. You don't feel anything anytime you walk on a pin, or you have a stub toe. You don't feel that hurt or that pain. In men, erectile dysfunction. In kids or in younger adults, irritated gums is an early sign. And then anyone who has a dry mouth. And then for me, patients who walk into my office, I take off their socks. You're actually looking at someone's feet can tell you a lot about the circulatory system. And so some of the things that I look at in terms of the health of your feet are, you have any calluses, any corns, any cracked skin that's dry, you have any ingrown toenails, so any fungal infections, you have hammer toes or bunions, right? You have diminished pulses. I check your pulses. Those are all signs and early signs that you need to have the circulation of your legs or your extremities checked. And also the circulation of the other organs, because they are all in play. What affects one organ affects another. So when a patient comes in with poor circulation to their legs, you want to rule out poor circulation to their heart and to their brain and to their kidneys. Because all of the complications of diabetes are kidney disease, dialysis, strokes, heart attacks, and amputations. It all adds up, and it makes sense. And to answer that caller, who is not who does not believe that diabetes disproportionately affects racial or ethnic minorities, the data is there. The facts are there compared to white adults. The diagnosis of diabetes is 77% higher in African Americans and 66% higher in Latinos and 18% higher among Asian Americans. I did not make up these numbers. Your amputation rates are higher, disproportionately higher in African Americans. Your dialysis patients are disproportionately higher in African Americans. The deaths from cardiovascular disease are disproportionately higher in African Americans, and your stroke rates are disproportionately higher in African Americans. I don't know what other data you need.
Well, you know what?
It's
hold
right
on.
in front of us.
Let me bring Angelique up because she was very emotional about this, Dr. Fakorede and Dr. Deborah Verholden. She was very, very emotional, and I understand it. I do. Angelique? Miss Angelique, how you doing?
Yes. I'm fine. Good morning, sis. Congratulations on your anniversary.
Oh, bless your heart. Sending you much love. What's on your mind today? You said you were very emotional about this.
Well, this is some of everything, some of all of what's going on, and I just want to say to the doctor, no, I'm not any doctor by any means. I'm just skeptical, a critical thinker, and I just believe that. Like, for instance, last year, we're in 2020. So in 2019, I knew I'm diabetic myself. And I knew that I kept saying, I know I do what I'm not supposed to. Like right now, last night I wanted a Mr. Goodbar. I didn't go out and get it. I've been on my way all this morning and still haven't. I'm going to get that Mr. Goodbar. But what I'm saying is that my sugar, my A1C, have been diabetic 16 years, they say. And my A1C had never been like 11 and 13. My doctor would always say, it's 7.5. You got to get that back. We want it more at 6. But the thing I noticed was that in conversation, other black folks that I would speak to were also going through where their doctors were saying, we're going to put you on the insulin injections along with the oral anti-diabetic drugs to bring the sugars down. And I thought that was kind of strange. I thought when I took my metformin that it tasted kind of moldy or something. So I thought that, in my critical thinking, that something was done to the pharmaceuticals prior to COVID that would make us even the more susceptible. And I'm just not inclined to believe anything. And you would know, Doc, if you experienced any, where you had to put them on insulin, those who were not on insulin because of the higher sugar levels.
Well, hold on, Miss Angelique. I want you to speak to that, and then I want Dr. Deborah Verholden to speak to the suspicion that you hear in Angelique. Dr. Fakorede, what are you hearing with Miss Angelique?
Good morning, Miss Angelique. I hear a patient who reminds me of my patients. Now, I am not an endocrinologist, but what I'll tell you, Ms. Angelique, is that, diabetes, there are two different forms of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2, all right? And type 1 diabetes has to do with the lack of production of insulin from the pancreas, which is an organ. And insulin is what controls and regulates your sugar. And type 2 diabetes is a chronic condition that affects the way your body processes blood sugar. So it's not an insulin problem. And that's why the medications that are given vary in terms of their treatment regimen. Some people can get insulin, some people can get oral medications, all right, like metformin that you mentioned. In terms of the causes of diabetes, there's a genetic factor, but also there's a factor of what you put in your body and what you eat, and how you exercise, right? So there's the lifestyle and dietary aspect to it, and that's why the first treatment strategy for all diabetics should be to eat right, decrease your sugar intake, right, and then exercise. That's the first treatment before you start doing any medicines. And the levels of your hemoglobin A1C varies. It varies for you. A 7.5 for you is also different for a 7.5 for someone else who's next to you. And what you have to realize as professionals who have studied these, and the studies have shown, for every 1% increase in your hemoglobin A1C. So if you go from a 6 to a 7%, if you go from 7 to an 8%, it increases your plaque buildup in your legs by 28 to 30%. In your heart, it also does the same thing. So the question is not necessarily, all right, how did I get there? It's how do I get you to go back to where I need you to be so that your plaque buildup does not end up to a point where you have to have your chest cracked open for a bypass surgery, or you don't need to end up without being able to speak because you get a stroke, or you don't necessarily end up on my table at the end stage saying that we can't do anything to save you from an amputation. That is what we're trying to prevent here, and that's why prevention and this discussion with you is important, so that you understand not only the types of diabetes but how we treat it. And to your point about the pharmaceuticals, I'll be honest with you. The medications that are utilized to treat a lot of cardiometabolic syndromes today, only about 4 to 5% have involved and included African Americans in those trials. All right? I repeat, majority of the drugs that are utilized today in medicine do not include African Americans in the trials that study these medicines. So I can't tell you that a lot of views were included in the trials. No, they were not.
Wow.
I can't say that your point is completely invalid. That is not wise for me to say. But what I can tell you is that there's data from my experience as a physician who treats about 10,000 patients that utilizing those drugs, in addition to procedural competence and preventative strategies, we've saved a lot of limbs and saved a lot of lives. I can only go by that experience.
Wow. Deborah.
Well, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Angelique.
No. I just want to say that I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. I just want to say that that's part of my critical power with the people, Black Panther thinking. When I say that they effed with the medicines. Everything is geographical, everything is demographical, so they know who's where, okay, and who's getting their medicine from where. It's all, this big database and whatnot. And I just believe in my conspiracy theory that, this is a form of genocide, this COVID thing, and that through the medications, the faulty medications, the medicine was not the same. Somebody somewhere tampered with the medications that all these people who have these disproportionate, whatever type of diseases, morbidities, or whatever they call it. And so we're taking this medication depending on it to work when it was filed up going in our systems, period.
Well, Dr. Deborah Furholden, why don't you respond to what you're hearing from Miss Angelique? Thank you, Miss Angelique. Sending you much love, and I want you to be as healthful as possible.
Likewise.
God bless you. I thank you. I received that. Dr. Deborah Furholden, Dr. Falcoredi said, we're not in these clinical trials.
Well, and he's accurate. And when I listen to Miss Angelique, a couple things pop out. Notice how steeped she is in treatment.
Yeah.
Right? It is more normal in our community because diabetes is so prevalent for multiple factors. We focus a lot on the individual determinants of health. Things like what you put in your mouth, how much you move your arms and legs, all of those things. We often don't look at the social determinants, the political determinants, and the structural determinants of health. People are very steeped in their own lived experience, but the reality of it is when you're faced with choices around what to eat, that is in large part dictated by the food that's available to you and your resources for purchasing food. And the reality of it is a lot of times healthier food is at a different price point than is the high-fat, high-sugar, low-nutrition food, and it's more readily available. People talk about food deserts a lot. And there are places where legitimately people are miles and miles away from any type of food outlet, right? You see that a lot of rural communities, et cetera. In our communities, it's more of like a food swamp. There's food available. It's just not the kind of healthy, health-promoting, life-giving food. It sustains people, but it actually, instead of supporting their health, it deteriorates their health. The other thing I want to mention is her, so she's very steeped in treatment. We are not in any way, shape, or form similarly steeped in prevention, both from an individual perspective as well as a larger societal, community level perspective. But her skepticism, her mistrust, what she called that critical Black Panther thinking, that is also very valid. African Americans have notoriously been treated poorly in the healthcare system. We've had intentional bad acts enacted upon us. Those are exemplified with things like the Tuskegee experiments, where African American men were allowed to suffer long-term, unending consequences from syphilis when a cure and a treatment was available, for nothing more than to study the natural history in a group of men that were deemed insignificant. We are all very familiar with the case of Henrietta Lacks and what happened when her cells were harvested and used to build all these vaccines, etc. And her family, in large part, remains living in poverty today, never benefited personally from any of that innovation. So the mistrust, the skepticism, to me, is very valid. But I do want to go back to what Dr. Fakarede said, which is the Institute of Medicine did a report many years ago called Unequal Treatment. Even when people are steeped in prevention, even when they're practicing good individual health behaviors, there is still systematic and structural inequality and inequity in how African Americans are treated in the system. He shared the example of we're very underrepresented in the clinical trials that are even testing medications. And we are also less likely to get the kind of life-saving, limb-preserving care that would have us not just live longer, but live better. We talk about things like mortality and morbidity. Well, there's something short of death that's called living unnecessarily with disability and impacts of disease, that if we were treated better in the system at every stage, from being included in the clinical trials, which the fact that we are less likely to want to participate makes sense as well. So there's just like a whole continuum of issues that we've got to unpack, and a system that we've got to dismantle if we're really going to have fair opportunities and equal opportunities for health and well-being in the African American community.
Which is something that you're pushing for, Dr. Fakarede, and you are looking at this legislatively. You have these initiatives that you are now pushing through Congress.
Yes.
Because that's really where we are now, right?
Right.
In addition to the education, because I think
right.
I think we've got to do.
So one thing that has been clearly stated today is that as minorities, we have the highest risk factors for these chronic conditions, but also we have the highest underutilization of therapies and procedures that are limb-saving and life-saving. And 90% of patients who've had an amputation have not had a preventable intervention called an angiogram, where you go in and you assess basically the blood circulation to the limbs and you can unclog that artery, or you give them bypass surgery. Those procedures are not done before they're offered an amputation. Usually it's an amputation-first strategy. And as I mentioned last time I was on your show, 80% of these patients who undergo an amputation are dead within 5 years. Hence why our mortality numbers are abysmal compared to third world countries. So this amputation lottery is something that, basically we need to address before we get to societies or policies that are mandating that we include more African Americans and Hispanics in research, which you and I know will take forever to accomplish, if we ever accomplish that. So on one end, we've already claimed that there's disproportionately higher rates of disparities in these groups, but we also are pushing for future research to include these diverse populations without coming with concrete strategies. So what we're doing is that we're pushing for policy action to address not only how to get parity on this topic, but also to address the cost that this is bearing, not only in our healthcare system, but for all of us on the call today. The taxpayers are the majority of the burden of this $300 billion cost to our healthcare system. So we have partnered with a bipartisan campaign, Congressman Donald Payne Jr. and Congressman Gus Balakis, both recently established the first ever PAD caucus with support legislative activities to improve not only PAD awareness, but research, education, and treatment. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that no amputation occurs without an appropriate angiographic or arterial testing before you chop off someone's legs. It's that simple. And two, we also want to incentivize a multidisciplinary approach where Dr. Fakulady can work with Dr. Verholden and can work with endocrinologist and a wound care specialist. And we're incentivized not only to screen our patients early on, but incentivized to have good outcomes. Right? That's what we call value-based care. That's what we're pushing for in terms of our healthcare system. That's what saves dollars, because the cost of an amputation is not only the majority of the burden to the hospitals, but it's the majority of the burden to the overall healthcare system. And so 90% of these amputations are preventable. Therefore, 90% of that $320 billion can go towards preventative strategies or research to include African Americans or to other social determinants of health issues that we need to address. That's 80% of our health inequities that we currently see.
90% of these amputations are preventable?
Yes, ma'am. 90%.
Okay, I've just, radio silence because I just, that's not what you're supposed to do in radio.
90%. It's prevention. It's like, it's early screening. If we had a preventative body that came up with who are those at risk to undergo an amputation, it's number one is diabetes. Number two, anyone over the age of 50 who's had either a nicotine use or tobacco smoking. Three, anyone who's had on the end-stage renal disease or chronic kidney disease. Anyone who's had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or anyone who's had a stroke. These patients need to be assessed. Whenever they go see their primary care physicians or specialists, take off your socks and tell them to attest for your circulation to your limbs. Two, if we catch that you have poor circulation, we need to treat it either with medicines, or if it's at a stage where we need interventions or procedures, we can do that. And in the hands of a technically competent physician or specialist, that will restore good circulation to your limbs so that your limbs do not rotten off or fall off.
2 minutes.
In the African American community, we see this intergenerational concept where an amputation is acceptable because mom had it, grandma had it. Mm-hmm. Well, mom had diabetes, grandma had diabetes, right? And you don't know what you don't know. So no one explained what the impact of sugar was going to do to your limbs or to your heart. We didn't know what the implication of not having access to a good paying job that will give you good insurance opportunities, that will give you access to good foods and good parks so that you can exercise and eat right would do, right? And so all those issues were not addressed. And so they were not informed to be transformed. And that is what's led us to this, to today. And COVID only exposed the epidemic of inequality in healthcare. That's all COVID did. I'm sorry.
I love Dr. Falucia. Oh my gosh, Fakulady and Dr. Deborah Verholden.
1 minute.
You all have got to come back to the show. I mean, you are more than welcome to come back anytime you wish, Dr. Fakulady. I mean, really, because people have.
I'll be here.
I mean, no, I'm gonna have you back in the next week or so. Trust me, because we're going to be safe, healthful, and well, everybody, and we're going to help him. So in Congress, because the money's there. They're printing trillions to save these corporations. Don't you think they should find some money to save you? Yeah. Dr. Deborah Furholden. Hey, everybody. Dr. Felucio Baccarede and Kevin Gray and
20 seconds.
everybody. I love you on my first anniversary, Dr. Patillo. Look, it's been great. And thank you, Chicago. Thank you, Milwaukee. Thank you, Madison.
10,
Thank you for this first
9,
anniversary. And I'll see
8,
you at 1 o'clock
7,
on Windy City Live.
6,
God bless you, everybody.
5,
I'll see you on the after
4,
show. Thank you, Lady B.
3,
Love you.
2,
Tomorrow.
1.
All right. All right, all right, all right. Okay, everybody, we're going to talk for a few minutes, but I've got to do something with these people, not just for Windy City. I think I've given them enough pub today. I've got a conference call. How about that? We are making things happen. Ha, ha, ha. Huh. Pull this back. Okay, everybody. This is what I'll talk about tomorrow, too. Ah, ah. Okay, very good. All right, all right. It's been wonderful being with you all today. I hope he answered some of your questions. We're gonna do more of this because what people don't realize is how you can prevent diabetes, and once you get it, you can certainly mitigate diabetes. If you go on a diet, they call them carbs today, but back in the day, it was just starches. When you get off starches, that diabetes and the hypoglycemia, it goes away. You become asymptomatic. Yep, I'm saying it because it happened to me. I wasn't diabetic, I was hypoglycemic. And it goes away when you get those starches out of your diet. So we have to figure that out, everybody. Miss Angelique has a point, and I think because of our history, because of our histories, it's there's a lot of pain here, a lot of mistrust, and I understand that. I absolutely understand it. But there's also an opportunity to really get well. We can do that too. So, and we must, and we need to find out why it costs so much to eat a healthful diet. Right? It costs too much money, too much money. It's crazy. When I became one of Dr. Atkins' patients, if you were going to follow his plan strictly, and I was in New York at the time, there was a particular butcher he wanted you to go to. Oh yes, it cost, but my mother had made me sufficiently scared of the diet, not scared of it, but just I wanted to do things. I've always been one who just, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it just like this. I want to be as precise as I can to optimize the results, and it cost more. It really, really did, but it was worth it because it kept me from going over the brink. Really, because I was beginning to have some problems. I was really beginning to have some problems. And if I had not done something, I'd probably be diabetic today. I was headed in that direction. And I don't want anyone else to have to deal with anything. I want everyone to live as healthful a life, as healthful lives as we possibly can. We should do that. Absolutely. So, I'm going to bring you all up in a hot second. Let me see. My phone is buzzing like crazy. Okay. Okay, just give me one hot second, you guys. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Um, well, I tell you what. No, you're not too old to make any changes, girl. Please, you're too old when if you're 2 years old and you die. Okay. So do we have anyone,
Hi,
Vidalia?
Santita. I have Mike.
Okay. Let me
Okay.
take Mike very quickly, and then I've got to do. I've got to got to. Oh, I've got a lot to do this morning. But let me bring up Mike. Mike,
Yes, you got him.
what's on your mind, Mike? It's
Oh,
wonderful hearing your voice.
I get it. I know I'm not on radio or nothing here, but I'm glad to talk to you briefly.
Thank you.
And
Wonderful hearing
I
your
had a
voice.
comment not related. Say that again.
It was wonderful hearing your voice.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
I had a comment not related to the health issue you
Okay.
guys were discussing, but basically it's regarding the upcoming election. It's going to happen 5 months basically from now, but.
Yeah.
I know you're very well informed, well educated, a great person, but Biden here, in our history, it's a rarity that a former VP or a VP even ascends to the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
It is so rare. It's only happened, I think, twice in our lifetime here. The George Bush and Nixon coming back after 8 years, but I would hope that if there's another candidate, I like Bloomberg and I like Tulsi Gabbard as a team, but I don't know what's really going to happen in the future. But I don't think Biden's going to be the guy, even though he's getting all the press still. But I don't know that
You
you
don't
guys
think
can
he's going
bring
to
up
get the
another candidate.
nomination, or what do you think? What
Uh,
do you think he's going to get?
my belief is that they will find a way to ask him to step aside, or he will have a medical issue, and his family will encourage him to do that, and other people. But I don't know who the replacement could be. I don't have the answer. Like I said, I like Bloomberg, but I've been right on pretty much about, I think, 5 out of the last 6 elections.
Okay.
Even with picking Trump, I had I think I had 304 electoral college candidates to Hillary's 232, which they never even 5 or 6 went a different way.
Okay.
But I'm pretty accurate. And I give you my personal number. I'm sure you have it there. Not that you need to talk to me. You've got a lot of great
No.
people out there.
No. I think that's important, but I don't want you. We're on Facebook Live, so I don't want you to give your number as soon as we get off the phone. I'm going to put you on hold, and Bedalia is going to get your number. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were on Facebook Live,
We're
but
on.
thanks very much.
Yes, we're on Facebook Live. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have been more explicit. I apologize. But I mean, look, I
Okay.
just we will see. One never knows what can happen because this has been the craziest campaign season already. I mean, think about it. The Democratic establishment did come in on Bernie and they took him out. I mean, that's what happened.
Right.
And one has to wonder where he would be had he decided to stay in the race. Because it's like these antibodies test for COVID-19 or for the coronavirus and for COVID-19. Oftentimes you get a false positive. You get a false sense of security because the antibodies don't test whether you have COVID-19 presently. They just test whether you've had it or not. And I feel that way about this
Right.
election season. It's not that he is everyone's first choice. I think he's a choice by default. I really do. But the system is what it is, and he is, 79 votes away from becoming the nominee, and God bless him. And I think that people are going to have to make their decisions about whom they choose to support. I mean, and that's all that we can, really, that's all that we can do, you know.
True. True.
And press, and no, there's more, excuse me. I was mistaken. You've got to, even if he is not your first choice, and he was not mine, you've got to press on policy. I mean, that's one of the things that you learn in politics. Like in life, you're not always going to get what you want, who you want. You're not. You're not. But you negotiate so that you can get what you need. And ultimately, I think that will give you a sense of contentment. You know, when you have what you want, my father said this to me, or he said it to all five of us down through the years. He said, be careful, be careful, be careful, because materialism and needing things has always been something that he has cautioned us against. It's like, don't do that. He said, you know, you've got to be very careful that your wants, he said, if your wants become your needs, then your needs will become your wants.
Mm-hmm.
If your wants become your needs, the extras, if you become needy for those, then what you need will be something that you will be forever hungry for which you will be forever hungry. Forever. Forever.
Um,
And, you know, we have to be very, very
um,
careful. We have to be careful about that, you know, because we put the cart before the horse. We want dessert. You know, we want the
mm-hmm.
bright, shiny
Right.
things. We might not want the workhorse. And we do that over and over again in our immaturity, in our spiritual immaturity. We gotta watch that. So, but it's a fascinating season. I think that his vice presidential choice will be interesting. A very dear friend of mine from Howard University. We were all in college together. And in fact, she's an AKA, so she's a soror of uh, Senator Kamala Harris, and I've got to reach back out to her. 'Cause she was like, "Well, do you think she's going to be?" You know, the word is that he's chosen her. I said, "Well, you know, one can only wonder because I think Amy Klobuchar is out of the running given what's happened in Minnesota. That
For sure.
I think we can safely say that Val Demings is someone they keep bringing up, and she's been doing the national programs, and that's a way of testing you out to see if you kind of catch fire with people. So we'll see because no one has caught fire with the American people like Bernie did. That's a fact. And the Democratic Party, if they really, really wanted to win, they would have found a way to work with him. Because you keep the person who keeps people excited. If someone is attracting 10, 50, and 100,000 people, you want to keep them around. But the Democrats do this over and over again. I saw them do it with Reverend Jackson. They do it with the people who excite folk organically on the issues. They do it all the time. So we'll see. I know that we're at an inflection point in the history of the republic. It's a really interesting time, and it's a time where we're going to have to be prayerful and we're going to have to be watchful and mindful because we have the president threatening to deploy the military onto our streets. He's threatening to override to have a fight with the governors. That is dangerous, at the very
And
least.
also trying to protect some of the national monuments too. I can
Mm-hmm.
see some level of validity what he's attempting, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you don't want the MPs on every street corner.
You
You know.
don't. You know, Mike, when it's very easy to cede or to give away a right. It's so hard to get it back. And I think that Americans have been lulled, and white Americans in particular, have been lulled into a false sense of security. Given that I come out of the civil rights movement, all the talk in my home was about, because my parents worked for Dr. King. They didn't just march with him. I mean, you can pull up about 10, 15 civil rights marches, right? And they marched a lot. I'm just saying iconic marches. I'm just putting a number out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, this was day in, day out work. And it was grunt work. I mean, the march was like the culmination of some campaign, but this was day in, day out work that was very hard and unglamorous. And I can tell you, um, there's a lot that we're missing here. There's a lot that we're missing here. I mean, what we miss is just how awful, just how horribly the FBI treated Dr. King and how they tried to blackmail him out of the movement. So when I see these bad actors, I'm not shocked. When I see the intelligence community infiltrating these organizations, which they do today, left-wing organizations. I'm not shocked. When I see people pushing back on our civil liberties and civil rights, I'm not shocked. That's what they've always been doing. The idea, the original, the founding idea of the United States was not for every man to have a vote, let alone every woman. Women were not even in the mix. No, 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 no.
Right.
This was a fight between the oligarchs and the monarchs. And you know what? This time, the oligarchs, the big businessmen, won. And so what we don't know is that the fight continued. Now it's a fight between the people and the oligarchs. It's another kind of fight today.
Uh, and there have been some good people that have gone along the way, like you mentioned the FBI, and I'll just mention one guy's name who would have been great these days. He's in your father's time, in my era too, would have been Fred Hampton.
Oh,
The guy was
absolutely.
genuine, and people have forgotten about him and, what our own Cook County, government and other agencies did to the guy. It's just
Well, I mean,
horrible,
the police, they killed him.
despicable. Yeah.
It's kind of as simple as that.
Oh,
They killed him. And I remember the police
yeah.
officer who was sent to kill my father used to drive him to and fro all the time. I had Howard Pointer on my show. God rest his soul. He's passed on. He ended up becoming a very dear friend. But he was unmasked, if you will. And he had to admit that he had been sent by something called, he was part of what they call the Red Squad. And he became close to my father, my mother, and our family. And he said, I mapped out your whole home. I knew everything about his movements and yours. And I was sent
Wow.
to kill him. And it was just, his heart was disinclined. He said, every time I had the opportunity, as I got to know him, as I got to know your mother, and I got to know you kids, I just couldn't do it. It's nothing but God's grace. So I've seen a lot.
Well, that means he found a conscience somewhere in that soul, however deep he had to go. But
Yeah. Well, you know what? I believe that, God is a miracle worker, and I'm grateful for that. That having been said, I've just seen us do that. And then I've seen people, when I see these kids in Minnesota who are mostly white, who are out in the streets saying that killing this man, this black man this way, you all were wrong for that. When I
oh,
see
definitely.
this Rainbow Coalition out in the streets today, they say, wait a minute. White, black, brown, yellow, and red. Straight, gay, trans, whatever, all ever. They're saying this is not going to work. And I just hope that the inflection point holds and we pivot to the beloved community that we deserve. I really do.
Okay.
And
Get
so,
some right police reform in there, as well as
yes.
administrative, as well as disciplinary, including promotions or demotions or firings. Things really have gone on, too long the way they have been. It needs some to be rectified in many ways, in many states, many areas.
Oh, look, I promise you, it's all good. All we have to do is keep on
Okay?
keeping on. That's what we need to do. But, Mike, do you
Yeah.
have a closing thought before we go?
I just want to encourage everybody, get everyone you know to at least register to vote, whether they exercise that right is their own personal choice, but you got to get people at least to register to start to think about things. Follow your parents, your grandparents, your friends, then develop your own mind if you feel you're going to go different, or if you feel you're on the wrong track. But that's all I would say. You got to get people to vote, to register.
Register, and it's their choice as to whether they're going to vote or not, but it's your obligation. And I think we need to push
Yep,
that. It's your obligation to vote. Look, if you want to
yep.
have a constitutional monarchy, which is what they have in England, which means the Queen and her family are still in charge because they own land. In London, you can own your house, but you can't own the land because she owns that. She's the largest landowner in the world. If that's what you want, great. We're the only major nation in the world where Americans own land. It sounds crazy. But whenever you see a monarchy, how are they in power? Why do they rule? Because they own land. They own the land. That's why the American dream is to own your house, because you own the land underneath it. That's a big deal. All around the world, it's a big deal. And we have to fight for that. We have to fight for the right, but heaven
Yeah.
knows we need to know what we're fighting for. We need to know what we're fighting for and stop fighting with each other so that we can fight for the things that we need. So, everybody, I love you. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. And you know what? We're going to get Mike's information so that we can find out, what he knows. Bedalia, Lady B, are you there? She had to step out to.
Oh, hang on. Thanks a lot. You have a great day at Windy City Live you're going to be on?
Windy City Live today at 1 o'clock here in Chicago. I will be on
I'll be
there.
watching.
All right, my
And listen.
sweet. And would you know what? Do me a favor, because I think she had to step out to do another show. Please call back tomorrow, even if it's just during the break, and
Sure.
give us your information, okay? I just didn't want you to put it out here on
Definitely.
Facebook Live, unless you want the whole world to have all your information.
No. It's for you guys' eyes and ears there, and we can chat another time. But you have a great day.
God bless you. God bless you. Okay, my love. Mwah.
You
Thank
too.
you. Everybody,
Take
I
care.
love you. Miss
Bye-bye.
Angelique, thank you. Miss Angelique, thank you for calling in. And Miss Pam and everybody, I'm so sorry I couldn't get to you, but I really, time was running short, and I wanted Miss Angelique, who was so emotional about this, I wanted her to be able to get in, and I'm glad that you did. And I hope that if you had any fears, I hope that those were washed away. And if you had any questions, real questions, I hope you got the answers, or I hope that they pointed you in the direction so that you can get some deeper answers to these profound questions. Everybody, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow, today, and tonight. Of course, when they replay it, I will be on Windy City Live with Gerard McClendon. Love him to pieces, and love the Windy City Live family. I will see ya tomorrow. Happy anniversary. Bye-bye.